I get a hug out for our MC, Laurel Blair, please?
Hell yeah!
So when I left DC most recently, I've spent 2 5-year stints here. When I left the last time in 2015, a lot of my friends asked me when I'd come back, and my answer was I would only come back as part of a conquering army. And at the time, I didn't think that there was actually a way to do that, but it turns out you can audition for that, which is precisely what I'm doing. And I'm so grateful to all of you for being here, especially those of you who had a chance to hit the mic and share with the crowd some of the work that we've done together. It's an incredible honor, and I'm very humbled, frankly, by both the reflections on the work that we've done together and the chance to represent our movement at a time like this.
Yes!
Right? Woo! We live in an age, and we are all concerned about the emerging dystopia. And, as I'd remind you that Justin put out to us, we have opportunities in all of our intersectional social justice movements to breathe life and light into the future, to build the new in the shell of the old, to replace the crumbling, failed, predatory corporate past with a future that places human rights at the center of our social calculus. Is that the future that you want? Does anybody here give a damn about climate justice? Human rights? Universal health care? Why is the elected representative of the nation's most progressive city standing up for none of those values?
Gotta go.
Why is the elected representative of our nation's most progressive city an architect of a mass surveillance regime that not only shreds your privacy, but threatens dissent and through it our democracy? Does anybody have a good answer for that? You nailed it. Yes, exactly. There is an answer for that. It's one word, 2 syllables, starts with man, ends in E. When we talk about surveillance capitalism or industrial complexes that prey on human beings for the sake of corporate profit, what we are talking about is exactly that, the subversion of humanity and human rights by capital. And I want to zoom back from all of the different platform claims, and I could talk to you about dismantling mass incarceration and ending mass surveillance and establishing universal health care and achieving the Green New Deal and all those other things, and I'm very eager to do. 18-year staggered terms for Supreme Court justices. Anybody want to get Brett Kavanaugh off the bench? I fought that fool's nomination to the federal bench since 2006. And I'm very deeply disturbed by the abdication of our shared values by our elected representatives here in Washington. I felt that way, frankly, my entire career. I left law school. I had a chance to teach before I graduated in 2003. And in the years that I had a chance to study what passes for law in our country, I witnessed the Bush versus Gore decision, so the Supreme Court stepping on the scale, deciding an election, contriving its future composition, which would suggest that the court hasn't been legitimately composed in 18 years. Right. I witnessed the worst set of terror attacks our country has ever endured, the contrivance of a surveillance power, a piece of which incidentally is set to expire in about a month and a half. Look out, and very soon you're going to be hearing about, in fact the Senate just had a hearing on Wednesday, into the scheduled expiration of Section 215 of the Patriot Act. We could talk a lot about Congress passing laws that nobody has read to shred rights that, frankly, people in the moment have no understanding. I'll give you a quick anecdote here about James Sensenbrenner, Republican member of Congress, represented a district in southwestern Virginia. He was the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and he says, upon the revelations of a whistleblower 12 years after he wrote or introduced this law, he says that he never meant to pass a mass surveillance authority. James Sensenbrenner, the author of the Patriot Act, says that his signature legislative achievement was co-opted by an executive branch run amok that contrived rules in secret, interpreted statutes in violation of their plain meaning. An executive branch under administrations of both major political parties with less concern for your rights than security theater. And that's the original reason I got in this race, because I can't bear to see a city that's been a capital of the peace and justice movement, a city that is an epicenter of the tech community, a city that has long been committed to human rights. The UN was founded in San Francisco. To see that city, my city, that I love very deeply, and always have since the first chance I ever had a chance to set foot there, back in 2000, represented in Washington by an agent of a military-industrial complex, by an agent of authoritarianism, potentially by someone who until a couple months ago was basically laying down on the job and letting a kleptocrat run roughshod over the country. One of the reasons I'm very confident that we're going to take this seat in November 2020 is that we have already drawn blood. The incumbent, the Speaker of the House, has shifted positions both on war powers. She actually announced her support for the Yemen War Powers Resolution that was subsequently adopted by Congress at the precise moment that we were mobilizing a protest at her office. And on impeachment, does anybody remember the dozen or 24 times that the Speaker reiterated her unwillingness to proceed before what forced her hand? Not just an in-district primary challenge, but also a whistleblower from the intelligence community. I'm gonna give credit to an unnamed member of our audience who could verify in another setting what I'll share with you here. At the same time that Speaker Pelosi has been essentially forced to show up to work because of the revelations of a whistleblower in the intelligence community, she still impedes opportunities for other whistleblowers to bring their findings forward. It is a set of rules that Speaker Pelosi approved that denies to whistleblowers, contractors, and government employees in the intelligence community the same statutory protections available to their counterparts in other government agencies. She also imposes a set of House rules that keeps most members of Congress in the dark and unable to access classified information by denying them access to staff with security clearance. This is at the same time that she's relying on another whistleblower's findings in seeking the impeachment of our criminal president. So I just ask you, when you have someone who is dragged into constitutional responsibilities, kicking and screaming, while still continuing to kick truth and transparency down the stairs from a position of institutional privilege, is that the alternative to kleptocracy that we would prefer? Is that the best thing to do?
No.
This country birthed democracy in the modern world. It's not lost on me. My family came across the world twice so I would have the opportunity to live here. And I take very seriously the rights that our institutional establishment across both parties has been entirely too willing to resign. They were not gained easily. We didn't win international human rights without a fight, an intense fight, the most intense fight the world has ever seen, and we proudly waged it to secure human rights that we now violate with impunity. Are you okay with that?
Hell no.
When the opposition to a kleptocrat throws $4.5 billion at the kleptocrat to fund concentration camps at our country's borders, is that okay?
Hell
Of
no.
course not. It's not okay. And we can't just repudiate it. We can't just call it out. That has to be a basis to end folks' careers. And I can't fire people in the executive branch, though I hope with your support to get to a position where I'll be able to. But I can replace some architects of this corporate, industrial, military, neo-authoritarian corruption. That is what we are talking about. I had a chance to speak to DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, here in DC, a couple hours ago. And we were recently endorsed by the San Francisco chapter. And one of the things I share with Democratic Socialist groups when I have the opportunity to address them is that the way I see democratic socialism is a helix that intertwines with intersectional feminism and post-colonial liberation. We are talking about taking capital and placing it at the service of human beings so that we human beings can be liberated from having to serve capital. That's been the paradigm. Every time someone dies early because they couldn't get access to preventive care that was withheld from them by a predatory corporate healthcare system that treats illness as an opportunity for extraction instead of care, we are all implicated. Every time a wedding party gets bombed because of bad intelligence that's driving a remote flying robot to incinerate someone, perhaps chosen on the basis of their speech, we are all inevitably implicated. Every time an unarmed person has to bleed out on a street because someone that they've been paying tax dollars to protect them has chosen to take their life arbitrarily without a charge and without a trial, either for the person killed or for the person who killed them, we are all implicated. I think I might be the only congressional candidate in the history of the Republic who has both been invited to brief members of the House and their aides, while also having been arrested in the Senate for an act of journalism. And I want to just share with you the question that I asked when I was arrested in 2015 at the conclusion of a hearing in the Senate Armed Services Committee. This is the late Senator McCain's committee. And does anybody know the name James Clapper?
Clapper lied!
Clapper lied. You want to come up here, Mike, and tell part of that story? I do want to shout
I'm glad you
out.
brought this up though, because I want people to know.
Yeah, people need to know this. And I do want to shout out, if I may, I've spent the weekend with Mike Ruffo here and Fadi Sabo on the other side. We're all on the board of another nonprofit called Defending Rights and Dissent, which was the successor of the organization I've led for 6 years. And I'm very proud to work with them and the rest of our colleagues on defending our rights in another sphere. So James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence under the Obama administration, famously says to Senator Ron Wyden in a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing that when asked a direct question, which he got written notice of in advance, that the NSA does not monitor millions of Americans, and it drove the Supreme Court a few weeks later to dismiss a case brought by Amnesty International, Jimeno's former employer, alleging the creation of a mass surveillance regime. And the court said, you can't prove it, so you can't bring the case. And when you have courts accepting executive secrecy as a barrier to constitutional standing, we are basically turning the justice system on its head and allowing executive secrecy to serve as a pretext for any number of human rights abuses, from CIA torture to NSA surveillance, which undermines the rights of dissent and whistleblowers and dissidents in other countries. I could go on. But the point here is, I asked James Clapper at the end of this hearing, I asked him, Mr. Clapper, how do you justify having never faced a charge for lying to the Senate under oath about mass surveillance when Eric Garner was just killed in the street in New York without a charge, without a trial, on the mere suspicion that he committed a trivial offense that harmed no one? When we have permissive so-called justice for powerful people who get pensions and an entourage for violating your rights and lying about it under oath, and we have persecutory, predatory, lethal so-called justice for powerless people, I am not willing to accept that. And it's as democratic socialists, yes, we want to expand human rights, we want to place people before profit. There is a brighter vision. What drives me to run for office, what drives me, frankly, to all of the activism that I've pursued over the last 20 years, is simply holding the line on a historical set of rights that our forebears won for us, that we are letting slip through our fingers. And at the same time that we might all be terrified of the various dystopian potential outcomes of the future, the only thing, y'all, that matches the intensity of our crises is the immensity of our opportunities, because it is in this crucible, it's in the response to predatory corporate capitalism, the death cult that will race our species off a climate cliff if we don't restrain it. It is in that crucible that we have an opportunity to build the new in the shell of the old, to refashion our society, to place people and working families and future generations at the center of our social calculus. Is that the kind of vision that you want to support? Yeah.
Woo!
I'm running for office basically because I'm tired of waiting for Washington to figure it out. And too many people have been making too much money off of your backs for us to sit by and watch it happen. There are a couple ironies to me. One of them is the fact that as an immigrant, I have the profound opportunity and privilege to remind Americans what our country stands for. And I take that is an honor, frankly, that I'm very humbled by. It's something that I think is poignant, perhaps, I would say. And if you are interested in seeing the institutions here in Washington diversified not just in terms of skin color and hairstyle, but ideas. If you want to see post-colonial voices informing our social calculus, if you want to see voices challenging the executive branch and checking and balancing as the House was set up to do, if you want to see people that are legislating and appropriating on behalf of you and your families and future generations instead of corporate plunder, if you want to see the House stand up to the war machine and make sure that our social needs are put first, I'm very eager to welcome your support. I'm so grateful to see all of you here. I want to offer a couple invitations. First, my most important thing I would ask of you, meet some new people while you're here. There is a profound opportunity. Everybody here is doing great work, and you probably can't meet everybody here that's unfamiliar, but meet a couple of them, right? Everybody here, if I had any hope, it would be that some of you might stay connected and find ways to support the important justice work that you're all doing on the ground. The work that Nick's doing to recall Jack Evans, the work that Ann's doing with the National Lawyers Guild, the work that Luis and Lori are doing with the poetry insurgency to protect a poetic, artistic voice to challenge kleptocracy and corporate rule, the work that Jared's doing to leverage the courts to defend the public interest. So many of you in this room are doing such powerful work. I really do invite you to explore each other. Two, I think, is anybody here not signed in, either on paper or online with Kim? And please make sure you do that. Come see Dana if you'd be so kind. we would be very eager to stay connected. If you are in a